I'm not gonna be on for long, guys. Just a little bit of time. I'm really not feeling well, but I feel bad because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stream much at all this week. I just can't really guarantee. Oh, god damn it. Sorry about that. I didn't even realize I was still up. I'm sure that made a lot of sense. I'm gonna choose one at random to start with. I'm expecting it might be an empty night, because I did cancel initially. Oh wow. I was gonna pick one at random too, but the one that I picked was super fucking long. No, we won't be doing that. I don't have the stamina for that. This one is called The Night Call by Henry Van Dyke. Oh wait, no, this is in chapters. That's a red flag. Oh no, this is long as fuck. Never mind. Nope. Alright, we're gonna go for something else. more. Oh God, why? Why is everything difficult? Let's try this. Alright. This one is Mothman. They were too excited to go straight home after the prom, so the group headed to the local soda shop to drink root beer floats and flirt with their dates. Natalie was thrilled to be out on this late and special night, in spite of the dreary rain that threatened to frizz her hair. Her prom date, Alex, was captain of the football team and considered the best catch in school. Natalie had won a lot of popularity points when he'd asked her to be the date at prom. When the root beer floats arrived, Tim, who was dating Natalie's friend Annie, leaned forward and waggled his eyebrows at the two girls. "I hear the Mothman has been seen just outside town," he said in a frightening voice, "waiting to pounce on pretty girls and eat their hearts out." "Ha, very funny," Annie said with a frown. Natalie frowned in confusion. "Who is the Mothman?" she asked. Natalie had moved to town at the beginning of the school year and still didn't know the local legends. Tim and Alex were happy to fill her in on the Mothman. As they sipped their sodas, the boys told Natalie the following legend. There was once a scientist who worked on a top-secret government project at a local chemical plant during World War II. The scientist was developing a chemical weapon from the poison of a South American moth that would destroy the enemy and bring a rapid end to the war. He worked long hours, late into the night, and grew so tired that he started to make mistakes. One night, the beaker where he brewed his deadly concoctions exploded right in his face. The scientist was blown through the wall of his office and lay on the floor in the hallway, writhing in pain as chemicals burned through his body. As the top-secret poison mixed with the scientist's body chemicals, the man started to mutate. Great moth-like wings burst from his shoulder blades. His arms and his legs elongated. Claws formed on his fingers and toes, and his eyes glowed red with fire. His incisors became fangs that bit right through his lips, tearing them to shreds. The mutated scientist licked hungrily at the blood with his striped tongue, and the taste awakened another fire in his gut, a deep, burning desire for human flesh. The accident in the lab had triggered the alarm bell. Night watchman ran into the hallway and came face to face with the new monster. They were the first to die. One man escaped into a guard booth and called another alarm while the monster tore at the door, with superhuman strength. The guard's frantic babbling was cut off by a sudden scream as the monster tore out his heart with sharp claws. His dying words were, "Mothman! Save us from the Mothman!" The phone dropped from his lifeless hand as the newly christened Mothman sank down on his haunches and devoured the man's dripping heart, chuckling in delight as blood spattered in its twisted face. By the time the police arrived, the monster had vanished into the mountainous forest behind the chemical factory. The Mothman is still out there, waiting for unsuspecting people to walk in the woods so he can eat their hearts, Tim concluded gleefully. Natalie shuddered. She couldn't help it. Alex laughed and threw his arm over her shoulders. "Why don't I drive Natalie home so she feels safe?" said he. "You and Annie can wait for the bill, right, Tim?" Alex tossed his buddy some cash and hustled Natalie out of the soda shop with a broad wink. Natalie heard Annie giggling. They both knew why Tim and Alex had told such a scary story. The boys thought the girls would be ready to do some snuggling after receiving such a scare. And Natalie had to admit, the idea of cuddling with Alex was very appealing. He was rather cute. Natalie wasn't surprised when Alex pulled off onto a remote country road halfway home and proposed parking for a while. She blushed demurely and agreed. And just as Alex slipped his arm around her, the car shook from front to back, as if struck by a mighty wind. Natalie gave a small shriek and clutched his shirt in alarm. "What was that?" she cried. "Was it the Mothman?" "No, Chaos, child." "Mom, Dad's going next door to kill them with kindness." "Mom, that's nice, dear." "Remember, there's a sword with kindness etched into the blade." "Also, Mom, honey, no!" How you doing, Chaos? I saw you were streaming earlier. I'm sorry I couldn't stop by. I was working, and then I took a break, and then I fell asleep, and I just haven't been feeling all that well today. But I did appreciate that you streamed. If I get time later on, I'll watch the VOD. I just woke up from a nap now, and I just don't know when I'm going to be able to stream again this week, so you fell asleep while streaming, so you didn't miss much. Hey! We both fell asleep. Nice. You good, dude? Like, I guess, have you been getting enough sleep? I sure haven't. But yeah, it's good to see you. I was sad that I missed it. Alex laughed. "Relax, darling. It's just a thunderstorm." He pulled her close. "I'm scared," Natalie said. She thought she'd seen a dark shadow pass over the car just as the wind shook it. In her mind, she pictured a twisted face with fangs eating the security guard's bleeding heart. "You've been sleeping fine? Just crashed for some odd reason?" "It's been super hot. It could just be one of those days." "Relax, babe," Alex said and kissed her. Alex was a good kisser, so Natalie forgot about her fear and kissed him back. These people are not very smart. Suddenly, the whole vehicle rocked on its wheels as something large landed on the roof with a huge thump. Natalie pulled away from Alex with a shriek. "What was that?" "The wind just knocked a branch onto the roof," Alex said, trying to kiss her again. I want to go home, Natalie said, her voice trembling with fear. High-pitched whine came from the roof. It sounded like claws were scraping at the metal. Natalie screamed. The Mothman is here! Alex, I want to go home. It's just the tree branch scratching the top of the car. Alex said, Come on, Natalie, we never have time to ourselves. Just ignore it. But Natalie was too scared to stay. Take me home, Alex, she repeated stubbornly. If it makes you happy, I'll pull the branch off the car, Alex said, hopping out into the rain before Natalie could protest. He struck his head back in the door and said, Lock the door behind me if it makes you feel better. I'll knock when I've got the branch off the car. Natalie locked the door behind Alex and sat listening to the rain thudding against the car as Alex disappeared into the darkness. She heard a sudden thump overhead, and the car rocked a third time. That must have been Alex pulling the branch off the roof. The car rocked once more, and a puff of wind rattled the windows. Then everything grew still, save the gentle patter of the rain. 1 minute passed, and then 2. Natalie shivered and rubbed the goosebumps on her arms as she waited for Alex to knock on the door. She swallowed nervously when he did not appear. He's probably going to jump out my window and make me scream, she told herself. Alex could be so juvenile sometimes. But Alex still did not appear. Natalie was steeling herself to get out of the car to look for her boyfriend when she saw flashing red and blue lights approaching from the road. Relief flooded her, making her lightheaded. Thank God, the police had come. She and Alex would probably get in trouble for parking, but Natalie didn't care. She just wanted to find Alex and go home. Suddenly, a police car slammed on its brakes, and the 2 men leaped out. Alex's car shook a thunderous wind. As thunderous wind rushed around it, something scraped the roof all over Natalie's head, and she could hear the police officers firing their guns. Natalie screamed as a huge dark shadow flew off into the night. One of the officers ran to Alex's car and pounded on her door. Still screaming, Natalie unlocked it and threw herself into his arms. The officer hustled her toward the police car, and something unearthly screamed above them. Natalie ducked instinctively as the horrible flapping creature dive-bombed them. The police officer pushed Natalie to the ground and shielded her with his body. The monster's claws ripped his back to shreds, right through his bulletproof vest. Natalie heard the second officer fire 2 more shots. Then she heard the monster fly away over the trees. Tears and mud coursed down Natalie's face as the wounded officer pulled her up and helped her into the patrol car. My date! She cried suddenly. Alex was outside with that thing. What happened to Alex? The officers looked grave and then shook their heads. Don't look, miss, the first officer said. But Natalie couldn't help herself. She glanced at the parked vehicle, illuminated by the flashing lights of the patrol car, and saw massive claw marks etched into the hood. A small bundle huddled on top of the rain-soaked roof. For a moment, Natalie's eyes refused to understand what they were seeing. And the officer touched the bundle, and Alex's head fell toward the headlights. Blue eyes staring blankly at nothing. Face twisted in a rictus of fear. His chest was gaping open, and his half-chewed heart lay on the muddy ground at the officer's feet. feel like you've written better, Chaos. It was good, but I feel like you've written better. This wasn't yours, by the way. This was somebody's. Alright. Chaos. If you're still here, you're the guest of honor. So, you get to choose where we're going next. Got a little left in me. For some reason, you're not showing up on the viewers list. Which is weird. Because even as you were typing, you weren't showing up. So I have no idea if you're still here. Alright, hearing none. None. Gonna pull one from this book. This one is called The Speaking Head. A tale from Eastern Europe. The boy felt uneasy, traveling to a distant land with a merchant he barely knew. He was going to meet the man's daughter, his future bride, but he'd never left Prague before, nor had he been separated from his family. Joseph was only 12 when the merchant approached his father to arrange for the betrothal. It seemed as though the two rich men had made a fine match for their children. When the merchant wanted Joseph to visit his castle, his father hesitated. The boy's bar mitzvah was only 6 months away. The trip to the castle would take weeks. But Joseph was an exceptional student. The merchant promised not only to help the boy with his studies, but also bring him home long before his bar mitzvah. So the boy's parents reluctantly agreed to let him go, and Joseph set forth to meet his future bride. He could not believe his eyes when he and the merchant finally reached the castle high on a hill. It was immense, with hundreds of rooms and a great tower that brushed the sky. When he opened the massive front door, the merchant called for servants, but no one answered. He called to his wife and his daughter, but no one came. "Ah, they must be visiting elsewhere this week," said he, as if he weren't the least bit surprised. Yet it seemed strange to Joseph. And when 3 full months had passed with no sign of the merchant's family, he became anxious. Besides, the merchant had not given him any help with his studies. Indeed, Joseph had not seen a single book anywhere in the castle. Joseph spent his time wandering up and down the corridors. He discovered that doors were open to every room except one, and one locked room was at the very top of the castle tower. Finally, he asked the merchant if he could see what was in that room. "Of course," said the merchant as they climbed up the tower stairs. When the merchant unlocked the door, he led the boy inside. Joseph was delighted to see that he had entered a library filled with books. "You'll find everything you need for your studies here," said the merchant. While Joseph hurried over the bookcase, the merchant slipped out the door and turned the key. Joseph was trapped. He ran to the door and tried to open it. He tugged at the handle only to find it was firmly locked from the outside. He pounded on the door with his fists and called out to the merchant, but the only response was the sound of footsteps descending the stairs, until an eerie voice spoke from somewhere in the very same room. "I see they have found a new victim," it said. The boy wheeled around and saw a sight so shocking that he almost fainted, for across the library, sitting on a round table, was an old man's head, severed from his body, and that head was speaking to him. Did stream die? No, I think we're good. Who are you?" cried Joseph. 80 years ago, I was a young boy like you," it said, "when I too was trapped in this room by the evil demon who pretends he is a merchant." Joseph shuddered. "But what happened?" "On the day of my bar mitzvah, the merchant came to me with his fellow demons. First, they cut off my head. Then they wrote a spell on parchment and placed it under my tongue. That spell reveals all secrets to me and forces me to reveal those secrets to them. But a speaking head is only good for 8 years, and now they need a new one." Joseph felt as if the ground had split open beneath their feet. "The merchant wants my head," he moaned. "That's why he brought me to this terrible place." "But it's not too late for you to escape," whispered the head. "Listen carefully." Joseph forced himself to move closer so he could hear, even though the sight of the severed head made him feel faint. "Your only hope," it whispered, "is to escape through the secret passage. See the bookcase behind you? Push hard on the 3rd shelf." Joseph pushed and was amazed to see it swing open, revealing a dark passage. He was about to rush in when the speaking head called him back. "Wait! If you don't take me with you, I'll be forced to reveal how you escaped and where you can be found. If you do take me, I can guide you." Joseph went back to the table and gingerly lifted that gruesome head. He put it under his arm, entered the dark passage, and pulled the bookcase shut behind him. Joseph stood trembling in the dark. How could he move ahead with no torch? "Count 703 stairs," the head told him. "Then feel for a door." Joseph knew he had not climbed that many steps on his way up to the tower room. Was the speaking head in league with demons? Dare he let it guide him? He felt rooted to the floor until he heard terrible voices crying out, searching for him. He frantically felt for the edge of the step with his foot and moved into the darkness, forever downward. His fingers ached from clutching the speaking head, and nothing worse than carrying it would be dropping it and letting it roll down the steps, leaving him alone in that terrible place. He continued down, trying to shut out the demon's voices, trying to remember to count. When he reached the 703rd step, he was breathing hard, and his legs were quivering. He felt for a door, and he found it. But what was on the other side? He was almost too afraid to turn the knob. Then he heard a demonic voice so close behind him that it made his ears ache. He thrust open the door, leaped out, and slammed it shut. Before him was a sunlit meadow, far below the castle. For the first time in 80 years, the speaking head smiled. Joseph was so relieved he laughed out loud. "Can you guide me home?" he asked. "Of course," said the speaking head. And so it was that Joseph finally made his way back to Prague, with the aid of the speaking head. He arrived on the day of his bar mitzvah and entered the synagogue, with the speaking head under his arm. All who gathered there to pray for him listened to his terrible tale with amazement. Then the speaking head made a last request. "Remove from my mouth the parchment on which the spell is written, so I can go peacefully to my grave." When the parchment was removed, the speaking head died. He was given an honorable funeral, attended to by all the Jews of Prague. Joseph slowly recovered from his ordeal, but for many years he was haunted by terrible nightmares, in which he was nothing more than a head, resting on the table, with no body. And he always woke up screaming. This one is called Snow in Summer. This is from Strange Tales from a Chinese studio from Fusong. On the 6th day of the 7th moon of the year 1647, there was a heavy fall of snow at Suzhou. The people were in a great state of consternation at this, and went off to the temple of the great prince to pray. And the spirit moved one of them to say, "You now address me as your honor. I make it your excellency, and though I am but a lesser deity, it may be worth your while to do so." Thereupon the people began to use the latter term, and the snow stopped at once, from which I infer the flattery is just as pleasant to the divine as to mortal ears. This one is called the Rook, from the same book. 2 herons built their nest under one of the ornaments on the roof of a temple in Tianjin. The accumulated dust of years in the shrine below concealed a huge serpent, having a diameter of a washing basin. And whenever the heron's young were ready to fly, the reptile proceeded to the nest and swallowed every one of them, to the great distress of the bereaved parents. This took place 3 years consecutively, and people thought the birds would build there no more. However, the following year they came again, and when the time was drawing nigh for their young ones to take wing, away they flew, and remained absent for nearly 3 days. On their return, they went straight to the nest and began amidst much noisy chattering to feed their young ones as usual. Just then, the serpent crawled out to reach his prey, and as he was nearing the nest, the parent birds flew out and screamed loudly in midair. Immediately, there was heard a mighty flapping of wings, and darkness came over the face of the earth, which astonished spectators now perceived to be caused by a huge bird obscuring the light of the sun. Down it swooped, with the speed of wind or falling rain, and striking the serpent with its talons, tore its head off at a blow, bringing down, at the same time, several feet of masonry of the temple. Then it flew away, the herons accompanying as though escorting a guest. The nest too had come down, and of the 2 young birds, one was killed by the fall. The other was taken by the priests and put in the bell tower, whither the old birds returned to feed it until it thoroughly fledged, and it spread its wings and was gone. A sportsman of Tianjin, having snared a wild goose, was followed to his home by the gander, who flew around him in great distress, and only went away at nightfall. Next day, when the sportsman went out, there was the bird again, and at length it alighted quite close to his feet. He was on the point of seizing it, when suddenly it stretched out its neck and disgorged a piece of pure gold, whereupon the sportsman, understanding what the bird meant, cried out, "I see! This is to ransom your mate, eh?" Accordingly, he at once released the goose, The two birds flew away with many expressions of mutual joy, leaving the sportsman nearly 3 ounces of pure gold. Can then mere birds have such feelings as these? Of all the sorrows, there is no sorrow like the separation from those we love. And it seems that the same holds good, even of birds and animals. This last one is called Salt, from Russian Fairy Tales by Alexander Afanasiev. In a certain city there lived a merchant who had 3 sons. The first was Fyodor, the second Vasily, and the third Ivan the Fool, well, Ivan. The merchant lived richly. He sailed his ships to foreign lands and traveled in all kinds of goods. Once he loaded 2 ships with precious merchandise and sent them beyond the sea with his 2 elder sons. Ivan, his youngest son, always went to inns and alehouses, and for that reason his father did not trust him with any business. But when Ivan learned that his brothers had been sent beyond the sea, he straightway went to his father and begged him to be allowed to show himself in foreign lands, see people and earn money by his wits. For a long time the merchant refused, saying, you'll spend everything on drink and come home without your head. However, when he saw that his son persisted with his prayers, he gave him a ship with the very cheapest cargo, beams, boards, and planks. Ivan made ready for the voyage, lifted anchor, and soon overtook his brothers. They sailed together on the blue sea for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. On the 4th, strong winds arose and blew Ivan's ship to a remote and unknown island. "Very well, boys," cried Ivan to his crew. "Make for shore." And they reached the shore. Ivan stepped onto the island, told his crew to wait for him, and started walking along the path. He walked and walked until he reached a really high mountain. He saw that this mountain, there was neither sand nor stone, but pure Russian salt. He returned to the shore and ordered his sailors to throw out all the beams and planks into the water and load the ship with salt. As soon as this was done, Ivan lifted anchor and sailed away. After some time, a long time or a short time, and after they sailed some distance, a great distance or a short one, the ship approached a large and wealthy city sailed to its harbor and cast anchor. Ivan, the merchant's son, went into the city to make obeisance to the king of the country and obtain permission to trade freely. He took a bundle of his merchandise, Russian salt, to show to the king. His arrival was immediately reported to the sovereign, who summoned him and said, "Speak! What is your business? What do you want?" "Justice, your majesty. Permit me to trade freely in your city." "And what goods do you sell?" "Russian salt, your majesty." The king had never heard of salt. In his kingdom, the people ate without salt. He wondered what this new and unknown merchandise might be. "Come," he said, "show it to me." Ivan, the merchant's son, opened his kerchief. The king glanced at the contents and thought to himself, "It is only white sand," and said to Ivan with a smile, "Brother, this can be had here without money." Ivan left the palace, feeling very downcast. It occurred to him to go to the king's kitchen and see how the cooks prepared meals there and what kinds of salt they used. He went to the kitchen, asked to be allowed to rest for a while, sit on a chair, and watched. The cooks ran back and forth. One was busy boiling, another roasting, another pouring, and still another crushing rice on a ladle. Ivan, the merchant's son, saw that they were not in the least bit concerned with salting the food. He waited till a moment came when everyone else was out of the kitchen. Then he seized the chance to pour the proper amount of salt into all the stews and sauces. Then time came to serve dinner. The first dish was brought in. The king ate it and found it savory as never before. The second dish was served and he liked it even better. And then the king summoned his cooks and said to them, "I have been king for many years, but never have you cooked me such savory dishes. How did you do it?" The cooks answered, "Your Majesty, we cooked this of old and did not add anything now. But the merchant who came to ask permission to trade freely is sitting in the kitchen. Maybe he added something." "Summon him to my presence." Ivan, the merchant's son, was brought before the king to be questioned. He fell on his knees and asked forgiveness. "Your Majesty, I confess my guilt. I have seasoned all the dishes and sauces with Russian salt. Such is the custom of my country." "And how much do you sell this salt for?" Ivan realized that his business was in a fair way and answered, "It is not very dear for 2 measures of salt, a measure of silver and one of gold." The king agreed to this price and bought the whole cargo. Ivan filled his ship with silver and gold and sat down to wait for a favorable wind. Now the king of that land had a daughter, a beautiful princess. She wanted to see the Russian ship and asked her father's permission to go down to port. The king gave her permission, so she took her nurses, governesses, and maidservants with her and drove forth to see the Russian ship. Ivan, the merchant's son, showed her every part and told her its name, the sails, rigging, bow, the stern, and he led her into the cabin. He ordered his crew to cut away the anchor, hoist the sails, and go out to sea. And since they had a good tailwind, they were soon all a good distance from the city. The princess came up on deck, saw only the sea around her, and began to weep. Ivan, the merchant's son, spoke to her, comforted her, and urged her to dry her tears, and since he was handsome, she soon smiled and ceased breathing. For some time, Ivan sailed on the sea with the princess. Then his elder brothers overtook him, learned of his audacity and good fortune, and greatly envied him. They came on board his ship, seized him by his arms, and threw them into the sea. And they cast lots between them and divided the loot. The elder brother took the princess, and the second brother took the ship full of silver and gold. Now it happened that when they flung Ivan from the ship, he saw one of the boards that he himself had thrown into the sea. He clutched the board for a long time and drifted on it above the depths. Finally, he was carried to an unknown island. He went ashore and walked along the beach. He met a giant with an enormous mustache, on which he hung his mittens, which he was drying after the rain. "What do you want here?" asked the giant. Yvonne told him everything that happened. "If you so desire, I will carry you home. Tomorrow your elder brother is to marry the princess. Sit on my back." He took Yvonne up in his hand, seated him on his back, and ran across the sea. Yvonne's cap dropped off. "Ah, me," he said. "I've lost my cap." "Never mind, brother," said the giant. "The cap is far away now, 500 versts behind us." He brought Yvonne to his native land, put him on the ground, and said, "I promise that you will not boast to anyone about having ridden on my back. If you do boast, I will crush you." Yvonne, the merchant's son, promised not to boast, thanked the giant, and set on the homeward journey. When he arrived, everyone was at the wedding table preparing to go to church. As soon as the beautiful princess saw him, she jumped from her seat and threw herself on his neck. "This is my bridegroom," she said, "and not he who sits by my side." "What is this?" asked the father. Yvonne told him everything, how he had traded insults, how he carried off the princess, and how his elder brothers had pushed him into the sea. The father was very angry at his elder sons, drove them out of the house, and married Yvonne to the princess. Now, a happy feast began. The guests got drunk and began to boast, some about strength, some about wealth, and some about the beauty of their young wives. And Yvonne sat and then drunkenly boasted. "What are your boasts words? I had something real to boast about. I rode horseback on a giant across the entire sea." The moment he said these words, the giant appeared at the gate. "Ah, Yvonne, son of the merchant," he said. "I told you not to boast about me. Now what have you done?" "Ah, forgive me," Yvonne implored him. "It was not I who boasted, but my drunkenness." "Ah, come, show me. What do you mean, drunkenness?" Yvonne gave orders that 100-gallon barrel of wine, 100-gallon barrel of beer be bought. The giant drank the wine and the beer, got drunk, and began to break up and ruin everything in his path. He knocked down trees and bushes and tore big houses asunder. Then he fell down and slept 3 days and nights without awakening. When he awoke, he was shown all the damage he had done. The giant was terribly surprised and said, "Well, Yvonne, son of a merchant, now I know what drunkenness is. Henceforth you may boast about me all you like." And with that, my water bottle is empty. And my exhaustion is real. Hopefully this will hold you over for a little while longer. As for me, I'd quite enjoy a little more sleep. I'm sorry for the short stream. I did say it would be short. go to sleep. Hey, I don't think I got a choice, dude. My body is shutting the fuck down. In the meantime, though, do not eat or drink any questionable substances. Make smart decisions. Do not die. Dying is absolutely forbidden, and I will see all. Wonderful people. At a later time. Take care, guys.